everybody, this is Anne and welcome back to my podcast. This is a combined podcast where I talk about my knitting, my spinning, books, and some cross-stitching. Today is Sunday, the 27th of January, 2019. I hope everybody's doing really well. Things here are good. I just got back last week from a trip to DC to visit my husband, and he and I went down to Nags Head in North Carolina for the beach. Not to do like lay out on the beach things. We both like the beach in winter, and we did some birding, and he took some photographs, and we went out to a couple nice dinners, and it was very relaxing and really nice. So that was a good trip, but kind of a little unsettled in terms of like trying to get my work accomplished, because it's hard for me to get certain things done when I'm not like here and have access to my studio. So anyway, it was good. I'm now home for a little bit before I head off to Stitches West at the end of February, which is the big event that's in the Bay Area. It's technically San Jose, but it's kind of a Bay Area event. If you're new to my podcast, welcome. I hope that you enjoy spending some time here and want to come back. If you are a returning viewer, as always, thank you so much for watching and your likes and thumbs up and comments and all of the above. I have a lot to talk about because I'm actually a week later than usual in getting this podcast out. So I think we're going to jump right in. The only thing that I wanted to say that was kind of more of a general announcement before I start talking about knitting. I know that I have folks who watch this podcast just for the knitting or just for the stitching or maybe just for the books, although I doubt that. But at any rate, I had announced the information about the trip to Scotland that I'm hosting, which is at the end of October 2019. And I had some folks who kind of watched all of the videos, but who are more stitcher crafters, ask about the trip. And while it is true that we will likely be visiting a day's worth of yarn stores kind of at the end of our trip, it's going to be while we're in Edinburgh, and so you are not required to go to the yarn stores. There's tons of other things you can do, and even the couple of days that we'll have out and about that have some days like that we'll go to small farm producers that produce wool. I still think that it's kind of interesting if you're not familiar with like crofting and the sort of small traditional farm in the UK, that you probably would enjoy that part of the trip. The trips are small enough in terms of the number of folks that you never have to go on anything, but there's plenty of things to do otherwise. Even if you just wanted to take a day and sit in the lodging and craft, stitch or knit or whatever, you can totally do that. So if you aren't officially a knitter, but you still think, well, that trip kind of sounds interesting, please feel free. You are more than welcome to join us. This is not just a knit focused trip. There's lots of history. There's lots of other cultural things. There's the bonfire on Hallows Eve that we'll be doing in Edinburgh before we leave. So if you're just interested in that part of it, don't feel like, oh, I don't knit, I shouldn't go, there won't be anything for me to do. Totally not the case. So if you're interested, you can always message me or leave me a comment below to let me know how to get in touch with you, and I'm glad to send you the itinerary. I think we're about half full. Or pretty close to that in terms of deposits. So once we get to that magic point, 18 I think is the magic number, we'll be closing out the registration. So if you are interested, you know, sooner rather than later is probably better. Okay, so let's see where I am, 4:32. Let's jump right on into knitting. So I've actually been very, very productive. I have finished all of the knitting for the Vikings collection. I will be shooting photos for that a week from today, actually the 3rd of February, so that I'm really looking forward to. I have a new pattern release that will be out February 1st, which is the sweater I'm wearing. It's a fingering weight yoke neck sweater called Spring Frost. This is knit in Pandora cotton, but you could knit it in any sock weight yarn. So patterning here on the yoke, plain body, and then patterning again here on the sleeves. So some stripes and some color work that, you know, goes with the yoke. Super comfortable. You can do it with waist shaping or without waist shaping, whatever suits you. This will be, patterns and kits will be available in the Yarn Guys booth at Stitches West. If you are interested, you of course can choose any other colors that you like. I was just going for something that I could wear with jeans because realistically that's mostly what I wear. And you'll have to excuse me because I think I have a runny nose pretty much every day here in the mountains. I'm not sure if it's wood smoke or whatever. Anyway, sidebar. Let's see. So a big thank you to my friend Andy, who is my sister's knitter, who cranked through this sample for me while I was stressing over getting the Vikings stuff done, so that I would also have this ready to release the 1st of February. Pattern will be available on Ravelry. Again, it's called Spring Frost. It won't have released by the time this video is uploaded, so you would have to search for it on Ravelry, or pop to my Woolywonkafibers Ravelry group and there'll be information there about it. Okay, so then I have also, drumroll please, finished a personal knitting project for like the first time in a gazillion months. This is Jamie's shawl, which I'm knitting as part of the literary quarterly knit along that I'm hosting in the Woollywonkafibers Ravelry group. Pattern is by Cozy Up Designs, and I opted to knit this in a handspun that I had in stash. This handspun was so old, I did not, it was before I even like was counting yardage, so I had no idea what I was starting with. I just knew it was a worsted weight, which is what the pattern calls for. So this is my Jamie's shawl. Now, I did not have enough yardage to finish all of the repeats of the pattern. There was going to be another eyelet or yarn over row like this and another textured row like this. And I think maybe one more row of the garter stitch stripes before you bound off. I knew I wasn't going to have enough yarn for that by the time I basically got to here because I only had one small ball left. So what I did is I went ahead and I finished the garter stitch section that's right there. And then I went ahead and did the seed stitch border, and I added one more right side, one more wrong side row, and then I bound off. I also did not use the I-cord bind off that's called for in the pattern. I wasn't 100% sure I had enough yarn for it. I was playing a little yarn chicken. So I just did a stretchy lace bind off that gives a little kind of decorative edge right there and is super stretchy. So this has not been blocked, but I will do that this week. And one thing that I'm considering doing, I know there's going to be like a gasp of horror from several folks out there, but I love this shawl and I could see using it a lot, but this, and I love this natural brown color. I just don't love it for me, like to wear. So I'm kind of thinking that I'm just going to take the shawl and I'm going to put it in a big old dye pot and dye it. Maybe a dark green, like a really dark forest green. It won't take much to get it there because the natural color means that it's going to dye darker than if I was dyeing it on a white fabric or white yarn. Hang on one second, y'all. I have to reply to my husband. Hang on, I'll be back. Sorry about that, I'm back. So I'm thinking about over dyeing this. I think it would be more wearable for me in a different color. So this is a super simple triangular shaped shawl. It's got increases here and also at this end to create this kind of wide triangle shape. It's got several different texture type patterns. These are actually slip stitches that make the texture there. There's garter stitch stripes, there's the eyelets, there's one section of little tiny bobbles. yeah, so just a really nice, easy knit shawl, and worsted weight. It goes super quickly. So if you have about 600 yards, you could bang through one of these yourself. I'll show this again once it's blocked and when I decide to actually dye it, which I'm leaning heavily towards. Although if y'all have any opinions, please feel free to, you know, chime in there for me. So that one is finished, and I'm really happy because this is one of the older hand-spun skeins, set of skeins that I had in stash, so it's nice that that got utilized for something. Okay, then I also started one of my Make 9 challenge projects, and it is called Silver Frost. I'm trying to find a picture of it for you guys. This is not the greatest picture, but we'll go with it. Excuse the crinkling. Pattern is by Bonnie Senot, and she used a fingering weight, lighter fingering weight yarn, and I'm using a heavy lace weight for it because I wanted to use up the stash. This is Sea Breeze Lace from Ocean Wind Knits. I think the color is Sagebrush, but I could be wrong, and I've left the tag downstairs, have I? Yes, I have. It's got a beautiful shine. It's got sea silk in it, as well as superwash merino. I love it. It's in just gorgeous, not quite neutral. It's a kind of a gray-green. So I started this before I went to DC, and I had quite a bit of time to work on it because it was my knitting project on the plane when I wasn't sleeping, because all of my flights, like, I had to be at the airport at, I don't know, 4:30 in the morning or some crazy time, which, yeah, there's not enough coffee in the world. Anyway, this pattern looks like a horrifically nasty dish rag in its current state, so please don't judge, but this bottom section is just like stacked eyelets. Then there's one small lace piece, lace pattern right here, which doesn't show at all. And then this is technically not a lace pattern, but because you're doing it on heavier needles than you really need to, 4s and 5s to knit it, it comes out basically as like an open mesh. It's actually a twisted rib, believe it or not. So this makes up the majority of the scarf slash shawl. I mean, I would wear it as a scarf, kind of scrunched up around my neck when it's finished. And so it's about a yard long now. So I have about another 10 inches of this pattern left to do. And then it'll repeat this section that's the border for the opposite end. And I promise this will look really great when it's blocked, but right now it does not. So that's what I'm currently working on right now. This was one of my Make 9 challenge projects that I was challenging myself to use up 1 bin worth of leftovers or long languishing stash. Had that for quite a while, so I'm working on that. I may cast on a hat just to have something a little bit, excuse me, a little bit different, but that'll be kind of my focus project to work on for a little while. I'm all caught up on design work. I am going to try to be doing some selfish knitting this year, so hopefully I will have some other things to show you guys other than like the usual, hi, this is completely done already, you didn't even know I was working on it kind of things. So I think that's it for knitting. Okay, moving on to spinning. Let's see. So I finished up, you guys probably remember I showed you, I think it was 2 of the 3 skeins for the hand spun that I was spinning. I think I'll just leave it in the bag. Yeah, I can do that. So I did finish up all of the Isle of Skye Rolags from Blaine Fleece and Fiber that I had been spinning. I wound up with 1,092 yards. So that was actually really good yardage for 12 ounces. Came out as kind of a light sport weight. Love the colors in this. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And so somebody had asked me in my last video what I planned to do with it, and I did a little pattern search on Ravelry, and I found a pattern that I used to have in my queue before I cleaned my queue out for eons. Originally published in winter of 2004 in Interweave Knits magazine, and now available as a download. So this pattern is Te Rosada by Pam Allen, who's one of my favorite designers. This is actually her daughter Caitlin, who has become an actress. Can't remember the movie I saw her in, but I had a moment, because having seen her kind of grow up as one of their models for many years, and then actually seeing her in a movie, not having any idea that's what she had done with her life, it was like, wait, I know who that person is. So anyway, this particular pattern had been on my possible knit list for a long time. It's a very simple lace pullover, and the great thing about it is it's knit on a super drapey, super large gauge. It's knit with a sport weight, but it's worked on US size 9s and 10s, I believe it is. So I'm pretty sure I can massage that enough to get gauge. You can't really tell from this picture. You can from some of the standing up ones that are on Ravelry. I'm not super crazy about what they've done for the bottom hem, because it almost looks like it's an I-cord. I have to read the pattern a little more carefully, but it's like pulls in a little, and then the rest of the pattern is like super drapey. So not a huge fan of how that looks. So I may do a little change up there once I get it on the needles. This was actually worked up in a hand spun that was from Louise, I think her last name is Galenter. She was the person who owned a yarn store in Taos years ago, and these are her hand spun, hand dyed singles. And so I thought, well, that's going to be perfect. The BFL that is in this will be relatively drapey, as well as the bamboo component, so it should open up nicely into the lace. It's got that hand spun look to it when it knits up. So my plan is, not right now, but later on this year, I'll probably cast on the beginning of May to have for my personal trip to Scotland, the ability to take this with me and work on it as my travel project, because I think it would be really fun to have it when we go to the Isle of Skye, to have Isle of Skye yarn and a project that I worked on while we were there as kind of a, vacation memory type project. So that's what I will be working on with that hand spun. Now, I haven't been here very much. I mean, I had like 6 days, I think I wasn't here, and then it's been crazy here as well. Just side note, the day after I got back from DC, we're having our bathroom redone, and so the guys came and like ripped the toilet out and broke up all of the tile with a sledgehammer, as well as my cast iron tub, and hauled everything off. So this past week has been a little bit disrupted. Anywho, I am spinning this gorgeous fiber, which is half superwash merino, half silk. It's in the colorway Ice Violet, which is from Funky Carolina, who no longer is dying, sadly. I have 2 ounces spun onto this. The other 2 ounces are on the bobbin. I'll work on that a little bit more today. I won't get this done by the end of January because it's already the 27th, and I'm just spinning it thin enough. I know it won't be done, but that's fine. I'm just chipping away at it. Okay, let's jump on to reading. So I finished 2 books, and I have started a 3rd one since we last talked. The first book is one called The American Boy by Andrew Taylor. So this book is set in like 1819 to 1820. It focuses on, well, its build is focusing on Edgar Allan Poe, but he's actually kind of only a small facet in the book. He is a young boy at this point. He is living with his guardians in the UK, in England. He's going to a boarding school. The book is told from the perspective of one of his teachers who, there's a mystery involved, and it kind of involves Edgar Allan Poe's mother, as well as the mother of his cousin, who's also his schoolmate, if that makes any sense. And the boys are like 10-ish during this time. It's a part of Poe's life that really not much is known about, so a lot of this is more fiction than history, but The author does a really wonderful job of creating that sort of sense of the gothic and sort of like creepy stuff going on in the background that you're not entirely sure how it all fits together. Our main storyteller, his teacher, is definitely not sure, and he keeps getting sort of dragged in and out of this. It's not a true it's not like an Agatha Christie type mystery. It's just there's something rotten. There's something not right going on, and it sort of involves the boys, but only peripherally. So I wouldn't really call it a book about Edgar Allan Poe. You do find out some things about his life, and it is very interesting because in the author's epilogue / sort of ending of the book, where he writes about 3 or 4 pages to say, here's what happened to Poe later. He's done a really good job of tying some things in the story that make perfect sense in the story, but then when he tells the epilogue that talks about Poe once he came to the United States again and grew up and started writing, and his rather odd death and the circumstances around it, you realize like how he ties those few known facts of Poe's late 30s into this book where Poe is a schoolboy. I think I had mentioned before that I could not find The American Boy as a standalone for anything under, like, I think it was $25 for a paperback, a used paperback, but I was able to find it in conjunction with another book from this author for like $3 as a Kindle download. So I went that option. So I have another book by this author. I won't get to it this year, but I did really like his writing. He's obviously somebody who does his research and kind of he absorbs the information into the story he's writing, so it's very seamless, and there's not a whole lot of here's the history lesson kind of information in the book. You just find out little tantalizing hints about things. And as I said, there isn't a ton necessarily known about Poe at this time. So at this time in his life, so a lot of it is going to have to be made up. There's no getting around it. The other book by this author, the title of which escapes me, is set during the American Revolution here in the United States. So that's one of my particular things I like. So I'm sure I will like it when I get to it. The next book I read is a nonfiction book called The Man Who Listens to Horses. The author is Monty Roberts, and he is the man who listens to horses. If you're not horse crazy, this book probably doesn't have a lot that you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's a for sure read. But Monty Roberts, if you don't know, is the person who kind of was the original horse whisperer that Robert Redford's character in the movie was named or was modeled after. And so even if you're not interested in Monty Roberts' horse training techniques, which run through this book because that's what he did for his life, he was an amazingly interesting person. He started riding at 3, probably even before he could remember. His father was a horse trainer, among other things. But he grew up in California, and so for instance, like, he's the person who rode all of the actual riding in National Velvet. So he was Elizabeth Taylor's stunt double in that movie. He had won he won Western Pleasure championship in California, like when he was 4. He attributes it all to the horse, but I mean, he's obviously somebody who has had a bond with horses his entire life. He talks about, other movies he worked on, just a completely different time of growing up, I guess I would say. This would have been the 30s into the 40s when he was younger. He talks about the fact that his father realized that Monty could make a lot of money on the show riding circuit and the rodeo circuit, so they got this abandoned railroad car and it could fit 4 horses in it, and they got him a tutor, and they put this like 12-year-old boy on this railroad car, and he went everywhere in the western states you can think of and rode, and won ribbons and won championship titles and all kinds of things. And yes, he had this lady with him who was attempting to keep up with his schooling, but basically he decided what competitions he rode in. He did all of his horse training, he did all of the promotion, because the theory was if he went and won these championships, he could say, oh, well, my dad's a horse trainer, send your horse and your kid to him, and look, your 11-year-old can be a national champion too. So like from a very young age, he was very business savvy, and he kind of understood what he needed to do to promote himself. The flip side of this is his father was somebody who, he doesn't really dwell on this in the book, but it definitely permeates everything that he did as a kid, that his dad was abusive. Mentally for sure, physically sometimes, but he was not an easy man to live with. And yes, it was a different time, but still not an easy man to live with. And his father was somebody who broke horses by the old method, in which you would break horses and not start horses, meaning they basically took a wild horse and they threw something scary at them, whatever it was, loud noises or even just the saddle, whatever. And basically they would tie the horse to a post and let him have a complete freak out, and basically just leave them there for 2 or 3 days to get over it. Some horses are mentally strong, and that wasn't a big deal. Some horses are not mentally strong, and that was a huge deal. It was a deal no matter what. Monty Roberts is somebody who spent a lot of time growing up with horses, and I think he understood them from the inside out. And so his point was, well, if you can have a horse do something for you willingly, something that you want that horse to do willingly, why wouldn't you have them do it willingly, as opposed to have them just be scared not to do it? And I think this is true. I certainly saw it in one of the horses I had who was started using this same kind of method. He was always very curious. If something scared him, he might not want to go up to it, but if you gave him a couple of minutes to think about it and like didn't push him to do it, he normally would then go and try. And he's actually a horse that the year he was 6, after I had sold him because he wasn't good for endurance, he went and did a mounted police course in Phoenix with the Phoenix Mounted Police Course and his new owner. And they basically told her they would write her a check for him if he hadn't been so small. He was a small, very small horse. None of the guys on the police force were going to be able to ride him. But he was that willing to try scary new things: guns going off, smoke pots, balloons, dragging stuff behind his saddle. And the flip side is I had a horse who had been trained more in the traditional manner, probably not quite as, let's call it harsh, but it took him forever to get over something he was scared of. The first horse, 15 minutes, he would figure stuff out and be like, oh, that was a scary thing, but I did it, and move on. This other horse, like for instance, when I got him, one of the things we found out about him was he was scared of the plastic grocery bags. And not in a good way, like I'm gonna bolt and run kind of way. And frankly, they're everywhere. They get stuck under sagebrush bushes out here. They can blow along the road. That's just not safe. It took me 3 hours straight of him running in panic in a round pen to get him over that. And he still was never really comfortable with it, but he was finally willing to step over that fear. So a very interesting book if you are at all interested in horse training methods. I would highly recommend it for those folks. If you're somebody who just wants kind of a good, interesting autobiography of somebody who had a very interesting life and did all kinds of amazing things, I'll toss it out. Anyway, sidebar with that. Horses. I am currently reading a book called The Enchantress of Numbers by the author Jennifer Chiaverini or Chiaverini. This book I'm halfway through, excuse me, and I'll talk more about it next time because I have a lot of stitching to talk about. This book is on Augusta Ida Lovelace, who is the person referred to as kind of the mother of the modern computer. She was a mathematician in the early 19th century, which in and of itself was rare for a woman to be a mathematician. But she actually worked with Charles Babbage, who developed what we now think of as a computer, a computing machine. And she also happened to be the child of the poet Lord Byron. So a very interesting character in history. She died at 37, so very young. So I will talk about that book next time when I have it finished, because I'm sure it will be finished. Okay, so now we're going to talk about stitching. Guys, I have a lot to talk about with this, so if you are here for the stitching part, I would say go get like a cup of coffee and you're stitching for yourself and settle in. Okay, so two things that I'm going to toss out that you did not know, that were not part of my plans last time I talked to you. The first one is I have joined Michelle Rudy's Farm Girls Stitch 9 Challenge. You can find the hashtag for that all over Instagram. You can go back and look for her Flosstube video about it. But basically, she decided that she would like to get some things finished this year. And so she picked 9 and then 10. But she said, pick 9 things that you'd like to get finished this year and try to get them finished. That's really straightforward, right? So I've kind of added that into like projects that I'm picking and not picking and focusing on, and I'll try to get into all this as we go along because it's going to morph a lot of stuff together. The second thing I did, and holy cow, this is an amazing rabbit hole, is I joined the Facebook group, the School of Magical Stitches and Literature. So y'all know already I love books. I also love Harry Potter, and that is the theme that the two brain children behind that, Kate and Vicky, that they are using this year to kind of generate stitch-alongs. Now, if you haven't run into this, and I'm sure most of you have because it's kind of all over the place, I almost hesitate to mention it because there's 700 people in it currently. And Vicky and Kate have all of these like weekly assignments for homework, for projects for people to work on. You get sorted into a house, they post the homework, you work on the homework, there's challenges both in reading and in stitching. It's amazing, it's super fun, and I cannot even imagine how much work this is for the two of them. So you know, like I hesitate to mention it because I'm like, wow, they've already got so much going on. Can they handle more people? But it is so much fun. I feel like I have to mention it because I wouldn't want anyone to miss out. So, yeah. So let's talk about how I'm dealing with that. I think I'm still, no, and I don't think, I am still sticking to my No New Starts 2019 concept. So no new starts. What I am trying to do now, however, is morph the homework into the things that I also want to get done, kind of more focus pieces, if you will. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what I've worked on, and I'm going to talk about which of those multiple things the projects fit into. Keeping in mind I was a little bit late to the party, so I didn't do weeks 1, 2, and most of 3 homework because I hadn't joined the group before then. So last week, which was week 4, is kind of the first week that I really sunk my teeth into it. There's also a couple of challenges there. One's a reading challenge. The books that I talked about, those all happen to fit into the year-long kind of ultimate reading challenge. There's a year-long ultimate stitching challenge. And then there's also extra credit and things like that you can do. I have not done any of the extra credit for January, and I don't think I will. I think I want to just start fresh in February because, y'all, literally, I have like 6 spreadsheets going to manage the craziness, which is fine. It's fun crazy, but yeah. Okay, so let's talk first about a start, well, not an official start, because this was my caveat that I was not actually starting it in January, that this was a club that I signed up for, and I knew I was going to work through all of these, but it is something that I put my first stitches in on and also finished this month, and that is the Annie B's January ornament. This is available only as part of the ornament club that's through Crazy Annie's Stitchin', I think it is. I'll try to link the Facebook group below. I'm not sure if you can sign up for it after the fact or if it's closed, but anyway, this was the January kit. So I opted to get the fabric and the buttons because the buttons are custom ones for that, and all of the floss is color and cotton, hand-dyed floss from my stash. So it's a 25 count natural linen. I'm stitching it 2/2. I used this for a couple of the homework assignments, which were things like stitch on something with green in it, or just put X number of stitches into a project. So this was a super quick little stitch. I think I did it, it was maybe like 3 hours, or between 3 and 4 hours, you know, kind of over a couple of nights. So that one is done. I'm going to wait to actually fully finish all of these until I've at least done several, because I think I want the back to match, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to just use like a gingham. But I kind of want to see how all the other ones are done. The finishing instructions have you do this as like a flat ornament, but I think I'm going to do them all as little cushion, like little tiny pillows, you know, and then I can either add a hanger on them, or I can just display them like dough bowl type display. So that is going to be some nice, albeit small, credit from for the Stitches with Stash this year for the month of January, which I'm still doing. Okay, talked about that. All right, I guess the next piece I'll talk about, which I am currently working on, is my mini Winter's Encounter. Artwork by Laura Prindle, and it is charted by Heaven and Earth Designs. I know you guys have seen this forever. This has been a focus this month, and probably will going forward, but I'm gonna talk about some other option thoughts I've had. So I started this, I think this is the bottom of page 1, and you guys can probably barely see it, but all of this white and barely there gray I have done. This is the bottom of page 2, and then I just have 3 and a little bit blocks to do to get to the bottom of the project itself. So I'm getting there, you know, I'm working down this column, and then obviously this is the side of it. So I've done basically all of this, and then there's a diagonal across there, which again, it's very hard to see. It just mostly looks dirty, but there, maybe you can see the stitches a little bit better. So I'm really enjoying working on this, and I'm loving the fact that I'm actually seeing a lot of progress. It's a little bit tedious to work on right now because there is, I mean, this is a lot of white or barely there gray, but right here is the start of this section where the little bird comes in. So this, the rest of this page will at least be relatively interesting, if not confetti heavy, because I'm sure it will be. Everything that's been those types of branches before has been fairly confetti heavy. So I'm just plugging away at this. Hold that thought, we'll come back to full coverage in a few minutes. I used this for, or I worked on this for 5 days early in the month, and I'm currently working on it for another 5 days to the end of the month. Okay, so if I don't check these off, y'all, I'm not going to be able to keep my place. Okay, so the next thing I worked on, which I'm also using as a focus for a finished piece, is my stargazer. And this is the Mirabilia stargazer, which I'm sure everybody and their brother has seen. I am working away on this. This is stitched on a 28 count Lugana in the colorway Phantom from Picture This Plus. And here's where I am. Guys, I got so much work done on this. I am super, super happy with this. So I finished her face, so that's completely done. Did that over one, finished her hands, stitched her hair and the bow in her hair. And then I came down, I finished this sleeve, this was partially done, and then I just started working down the body. Now, if you've seen Jessie Marie's gorgeous Virginia Tech conversion, you'll know that like this, yes, this took a while because the skin one over one does, but like the bulk of this pattern is the massiveness that is her dress. I was very tempted because this basically is, well, this is basically the page break right about there. So I would have almost all of page one done. The spaces that are in here that you see are actually for beads, and then there's all the swirling beads that are in the sky. I actually thought about just going ahead and doing those, getting them done, and then I could say like the first 2 pages would be done, but I'm still a little leery about doing that and putting it on my back on my frame. I don't know. I'm very tempted to work on the beads, but we'll see. Anyway, so this will be out again in February for another 5 days. And I'm using her for one of the extra credit projects in the School of Magical Stitches and Literature. The stitching extra credit, that's the Ultimate Stitching Challenge, is focused on the number 7. And so it's things that come up in increments of 7, like 7 years of school, Harry's Quidditch number is 7, number of Horcruxes, that kind of thing. So this is for the years at Hogwarts, and because first years took astronomy using the stargazer. Loved working on her. She is also one of the projects that I have on my Stitch 9 challenge. And I'm going to go through all of those after I'm done showing you guys what I worked on. Okay, so then the other piece that I worked on quite a bit. I don't have the full pattern because I didn't come prepared apparently. I just have my working copy. But this little one is called Pins and Needles. It is from the designer Annie Bees, who's also doing the ornaments. And I'm stitching this on a 28 count Jobelin that I hand dyed myself. I'm actually stitching it 1 over 1 as opposed to 2 over 2, which the pattern calls for, using color and cotton hand dyed threads. And so this is the bottom border, and needles and pins as opposed to pins and needles repeats down here. I'm not totally sure that I love that, so I may leave that off. I'm obviously working on the house right now and the letters here. I used this for a couple of my homework pieces that were just, you know, do X number of stitches, so I used that. And then I'm also probably going to use it for extra credit because one of the things I'm using it is the 7 tasks in Sorcerer's Stone, and one of those things is the Devil's Snare vine. And so there's vines all here, and there's this trailing vine here. What else can I say? I'm not totally sold on this light green. I've ripped it out once and replaced it and I'm still not sure I'm loving that one. I don't know that, I mean, maybe I will as I work down it. I don't know. I needed something really bright, like the original has almost like a lemon lime color. I needed something brighter than this bright green to use, but like I said, I'm not totally sold on it. So if you have an opinion, shout it out. You know, I'd love to hear it. So that is also one of my Stitch 9 projects for next year. So that will get some more focus at some point. Right. And then finally, I worked on this also for multiple homework pieces, as well as just like a general travel project, and that is the Prairie Schoolers When Witches Go Riding. I'm doing the bigger piece. I am stitching this on a 28 count linen that I hand dyed myself. I am using silks I hand dyed by myself. So last time I just had this part worked. I didn't have the back stitching done, so I've added that. And I think I had the when finished. So I've added the moon, and I've added all those letters plus the owl, and I started to bring the border down. So I use this for multiple different homework prompts. One was to stitch an animal, so I did that, a certain number of stitches on an animal. I think one was to stitch a block of color. I think that's what I used there. Can't remember what else I used this for, but there is that one. Actually really pleased with how much progress I got. The owl is basically the halfway point on it, and granted the lettering takes less time than the bottom, which is almost all full coverage type stitching. It's like this is all solid, but you can see I'm down through there. So yeah, that one's seems like it's a pretty straightforward stitch. Loving the colors in it. Love working with the silks. Love that moon. Yeah, all good. So I worked on that. And I have to say that one of the things that I've really liked about the School of Magical Stitches and Literature is the fact that one of the things that I kind of struggled with a little bit was the fact that it was like, okay, if I focus on all these pieces that are bigger pieces, there's going to be a bunch of stuff I'm not even going to touch this year. And I really like to do that. So this has given me an excuse to haul some stuff out. Even if I'm only putting 100 stitches in it, you know, it's 100 stitches. So all good. And let me show you then the last project that I worked on for my homework this week. And that is Spirit of Evergreen from Brooks Books. This is the first of these that I'm tackling, but I do have like all of these seasonal type, fairy, angel, whatever you want to call them. So I used this for the prompt, work on something that was puzzling, because it's all done in different pieces on perforated paper, like puzzle pieces, and then fitted together. So I had started the wings when I started this in November, I think it was, during Startpocalypse, and I decided I was going to actually start on her body proper. So I worked on her hair. That's not really going to help you see it. Sorry about that. There. So just worked on that one color, but that worked good. So, you know, got a fair amount done. I think we only had to put 100 stitches in on this one, so I did that in like a little bit, just got to a stopping point and stopped when I reached the magic number. So that was really fun, because like I said, like I didn't even think I would get any stitches in this at all this year, and so hey, there's 100 stitches, you know, it's all good. And there's enough little weird bits in that I think she may come out again as homework, you know, something to add beads or something to add Krynic or sparkle or things with wings or fairies or, you know, whatever. Okay. So I think that catches me up through everything that I've worked on so far this month. Let's talk a little bit, time out. Let's talk about the Stitch 9 challenge. So here are my 9 projects. You've seen Pins and Needles, and you've seen Stargazer, so I won't show you that one again. I'm also going to work on, and these are things that I would like to get finished this year. I'm going to work on my March wordplay and my September wordplay. And I figured out a way to have both of these work as extra credit Ultimate Stitching Challenge projects. So those topics require 1,000 stitches each in them. So I feel like I'll make some pretty good progress like when I get to doing those, and I think it's too much to talk about like what all the themes are. I'll just tell you what they are when we get to them, because this video is already going to be an hour plus probably. I'm also working on, excuse the crinkling here for a moment. This is a shepherd's bush pattern called Summer. And it looks like that. I just have a little bit done on it that I started during Startpocalypse, so not much to show on that. I'll show it when I get it out to work on it. I'm going to be working on Snow for Christmas by Brenda Gervais. And I'm going to be working on Christmas Tea by Brenda Gervais. Both were Startpocalypse starts. So there's almost nothing to show you, so I'm not even going to bother. I'm doing all of these plus all of the word plays. I'm using color and cotton as opposed to gassed threads in those to use them from my stash. I'm also going to be working on Mill Hill's Celtic Santa. This is the Celtic Santa series. This is the Scotland Santa because Scotland. And I figured this might be my travel project to Scotland because wouldn't that be fun too? I think so. So got those. What else have I missed? I'm missing, oh, here's the other one. I'm not looking necessarily to finish this, but I would like to get the boarding house and this block right here with the trees done this year. That's my goal for this project, is to get those 2 done. And just because I haven't had this one out in a very long time, I will show you guys where I am. So I've got blocks 1, 2, and 3 done. I've got block 4 started. I need to do the sign. I need to do the dogs. I think there's some back stitching I need to do. Not much, but some. So yeah. Be good to just, you know, put some stitches in on this one. I'm working that on a 22 count Hardanger in the colorway Legacy from Picture This Plus and DMC threads. I am charting some personalization of it, things that have to do with my family. So like this is going to be Jane's boarding house. That was my Gram's, the name my Gram went by. And she always had people staying at her house. So that is the end of my Stitch 9 plans. And there's a lot of those that fit into the School of Magical Stitching and Literature's Ultimate Stitching Challenge. So if I can put 1,000 stitches in on those, I feel like I'll have a lot of good traction and hopefully we'll be able to get those done. Let's do one small stash enhancement piece and then we'll talk plans. Sorry for the crinkling. This is my Color and Cotton Fabric of the Month from December. It is a 32 count Lugana and the colorway is Wedgwood. And it is a mottled gray with maybe a little bit of blue-green to it. I think it's maybe a little bit grayer here than it is in real life, but super pretty. Be great for like a spooky kind of pattern. The one thing I did not bring today, because like I said, I wanted to keep this down to at least a semi-dull roar. I did get the Mirabilia patterns that I had ordered as part of my Christmas stuff, so they're here. I just didn't bring them to show you those today. I will at some point in the future to talk about those. Okay, so plans. So I still want to try to put some focus time in on my full coverage pieces. I was watching Gem Stitch this morning, and she was talking about her new rotation and kind of why she picked things to slot in certain ways. And, you know, one thing she said, which I'm aware of this fact, but she said it so succinctly that I was like, yeah, that's a really good point, is she said, it doesn't really matter what your rotation is, but the more pieces you put in your rotation, the longer time it's going to take you to finish pieces. So, you know, if you're working on 5 pieces only, then obviously those 5 pieces are going to get a lot more time than if you're trying to work on 60 pieces at one time, or in my case, 42. So, especially when you have really large pieces like the full coverage pieces, and I know that they take longer to do, and I'm fine with that. I mean, it's not a race. It's not, I'm not doing it like on a deadline of some kind. So, as I've been working on my winter's encounter this week, I thought to myself, okay, I can appreciate that concept, because I had been thinking about it as well, and thinking, you know, getting a little burned out already with the white, and if I just work on this as a focus project this year, like, am I going to get to the point that I don't want to work on it at all? And I hope that that would not be the case, because I love that design. I love that artwork. But realistically, you know, variation is the spice of life. So what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to narrow my, oh, and I forgot to show you one other thing. This will make supporting documentation. I also worked on a stitching shelf this month. Do y'all know this one? Everybody knows this one from Haid, right? I put that square in. I had to do 100 stitches on my biggest project for the troll homework. Yeah, so I did 100 stitches right there. And I remember how much I adore this piece. I mean, I just love it. Every time I work on it, I'm like, why am I not working on this? Which brings us back to our plans discussion. So I think what I'm gonna do is, knowing that now I've got like weekly homework to do, which is gonna be, you know, 100, 200 stitches on probably multiple projects. I think that that's the way it's going, because in order to fit a theme, you kind of, I mean, it's very rare that you would have one project that would work for every single theme that's out there. I'm very happy that I started so much stuff, because if I'd only had like 10 projects to pick from, it would be a challenge. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but it would be much more of a challenge. So here's my plan that I'm going to try out for February. I'm going to work on my weekly homework, and whatever project needs to get pulled for that, I will. If I can make it fit one of my pieces I'd like to get done for 2019, that's stitch 9, then I will. If I can't, totally fine, and no harm, no foul. I'll just put some stitches in on it. And I'm hoping that then that means I will be able to stitch on everything in my current 42 whips, at least some stitches this year, which would make me feel very good. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to have Stargazer as a focus piece. She's going to get 5 days a month no matter what. Even after I finish the 1,000 stitches that I need to put in her for my Ultimate Stitching Challenge. I really want to get her done. She's one of my Stitch 9 projects. She's the biggest of the Stitch 9 projects. And I really want to get her done, because next year in 2020, I have a whack of Mirabilias that I want to start. So I would like to get her done so that, you know, kind of fancy lady, I've completed that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of 3 full coverage projects as my focus for the rest of the month. So it's either going to be Winter's Encounter, which I think I will probably work on just through the end of this month, and then I'm going to rotate to Which Way for February. This is also the project that I'm going to use for the Full Coverage Fanatics Fantasy and Fairy Tales, say that 3 times fast, SAL, that kicks off February 1st. So this will kind of be my full coverage focus piece for February. Enough F's in there for you. Let me show you where I am on her, just to give you a visual. Here she is. So I believe this right here is the middle, like, of the piece. So I think it's 4.5 pages down by 3 pages wide, or something pretty close to that. So I'm also using this for one of my Ultimate Stitching Challenge pieces. There's one of them is the fowls in Quidditch, and there's 700 fowls, and I did some research on Potter Wikipedia, which is super helpful. One of the fowls is that was committed during a game, I can't remember when it was, but vampire bats were released, 100 vampire bats were released onto the Quidditch playing field, and so that is considered a foul. So bats, this has bats in it. And I think I might even get to that bat this time, which would be awesome. So that's going to be my full coverage focus piece for February. And so I'm going to work on that basically as much as I can when I can. And what that will also help me do is when I have travel, which y'all know I have a lot of travel this year, it'll give me the chance to take something small and work on that for a week, because I'm going to have a really hard time keeping up with the homework while I'm on travel, the weekly homework. So I'll have to take a project to do that maybe covers some of the homework and then make it up with extra credit or something like that. So until I see what the homework is, next week's homework comes out, I think either tonight or tomorrow. Tomorrow being Monday, today being Sunday. I won't know exactly what I'm going to work on, other than I will be working on Winter's Encounter for the next few days to get us through the end of the month, since this is my current focus piece. And yes, I am totally aware that that means that I probably will not get this done anytime in the next 2 years. But realistically, as I've been working on this, I am not Jessie Marie. I cannot put like 1,500 stitches in this in a day. I just don't have bandwidth for that. Yesterday I did 500, and that was like a banner day for me. So, oh, I can see where I missed a stitch right there. Different lighting. Anyway, so, you know, I figure if I can do like half a page a month on each one of these, I'll get 2 pages or thereabouts done on each one of those 3 projects, this, Which Way, and a stitching shelf over the course of the year. I'm using a stitching shelf for several of the Ultimate Challenge things because there's so much stuff in that pattern. Like, you can use it for lots of different topics, which is why I'm doing it. And then everything else I'm going to kind of slot in as I go. My chatelaine will get some time this year for some of the Ultimate Challenges, which, see, I didn't even think I was going to get to that this year, and I really hated that thought, other than the January chatelaine along I'm doing with Aviatrix Stitcher, which if you have a chatelaine and would like to work on that in July, feel free. She's going to start her first one in July, and I'm going to work on mine, my Desert Mandala, which was a birthday start. My birthday's in July. That month as well, and probably one other month. So, you know, I know that that will get some love. It probably won't happen until after Stargazer is done, but that's okay. I'm trying to be a little bit more zen. I tend to be somebody who, like, I have a list and I want to check the stuff off the list and say done, 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 done. But I enjoy stitching so much. It's my relaxation. Now that knitting is kind of a job and not a hobby kind of thing, it's not always relaxing for me, not very often relaxing for me anymore. It's usually on a deadline. That it's like, you know, when I get this stuff done, I will just enjoy it at that point. If I can get some smaller stuff done to have out, to look at, to enjoy in the meantime, great. That would be wonderful. But don't need to stress over it. I'll be back. Sorry, you guys. Back again. Sorry about that. Interruptions again today. So I'll just work on stuff. That's the summation of all of this and pretty much all else I had to say to you guys. Again, I will endeavor to link everything I can below. Not always 100% consistent, but I will try. Yeah, so until then, till next time I talk to you, I'm going to probably try to record a little bit earlier. It's weird having the contractors here during the week because like all of my daytime light is when they are here Monday through Fridays, and probably will be through February. So until they are gone, and I'm kind of back to a more normal schedule, I'm just going to try to sneak in a podcast where I can. So it might be a little early or it might be a little bit late, but I will be back. So until then, which hopefully will be mid-February, I hope that you guys have a great couple of weeks. Enjoy whatever hobbies it is that you are interested in and working on. Just enjoy all the great things that early February has to offer, whether it's snow or sunshine in your neck of the woods. Have a great couple of weeks, everybody, and I will talk to you then. Take care. Bye-bye.